We have got our candidates. We've got Zach, Shara, and Tyrone. Unfortunately, Nick Humberstone is unable to make it tonight, and sends his apologies. I'm just going to explain a little bit of how things are going to go tonight. Each of our present candidates are going to be able to give us a 3-minute elevator pitch on why we should vote for them and why we should choose them for our new deputy leader. We are going to have a number of questions. We might not be able to get through all of them. We have several that have been sent in over our online form. And each of those are going to have a 2-minute answer from each of our candidates. And then depending on how long that takes, hopefully we'll get through them all. We might not. And depending on how long that takes, will depend on exactly how long the closing statements are. But each of the candidates will get a closing statement. Unfortunately, I don't believe that we have a specific closing statement, opening statement from Nick, but his statement is available on the members website, I believe. I'm going to just quickly get a randomizer up for the statement. Apologies, this was dropped to me somewhat last minute, so I'm slightly scrabbling to catch up to that. So first up is going to be Shara, followed by Zach, and then Tyrone. I'm going to time you. I'm going to give you a 15-second warning for when your time is about to run out. And I'll give you a warning when you are over your time. And if you go more than 5 seconds over your time, I will be muting you, just as a heads up. So I'm going to quickly ask Shara to unmute and start your video. And then I will spotlight you.
Hi, Kate, can you hear me?
You sound a little bit far away.
Oh, okay. Is that better? It was okay earlier.
It was totally fine earlier. Keep talking.
Yeah. Before I switch on the video, I just had a operational question.
Okay.
Do we have, or are we supposed to have, only members of GPEW in the room?
I think because it's not related to questions, I believe that we had invited members of Scottish Greens as our sister party, but I don't think that we were limiting attendance based on membership.
Okay. So
yeah, okay, that's fine.
I'm just wondering whether that affects our safe spaces policy, which is for party members only, isn't it?
Well, I'm the only person that can currently be contacted via the chat, and I'm the only person that can allow people to speak. It was something that the committee decided on, that we would, after being asked by the Scottish Greens if we would allow them. They're our sister party, so it does affect, you know, them as well as us. So
that's absolutely fine. I've got some probably a few views on that as well, but that's absolutely fine. Thanks for the clarification.
No problem. So I'm going to start you. Your 3 minutes now.
Great. Thanks, Cade. Thanks, LGBTIQ plus Greens, for organising this really vitally important hustings. And when I'm asked about LGBTIQ, I think equalities, and I hope you do too. The Green Party stands for the equality of all, equally. And that's the central plank on which I'm standing. And I have been for the past 20 years. I think it's okay for us to have out in the open that there has been disagreement and strife in the party. And for those who haven't been unwittingly exposed to it, we've got a confirmation of this, haven't we, in the recent recommendations of the Diversity Matters report, which was published and circulated by the Green Party very recently. And I think it is important that we do reflect on that and what candidates can bring over and above all the other things which they're going to be campaigning on strongly. So I stand for climate justice, I stand for social and environmental justice, but I also fight for the equality of all equally. And I do think, sadly, that as the Diversity Matters report points out, there has been a conflict which we need to name. And the first step towards overcoming it is to appreciate the problem and the scale of it. So the report does describe a conflict around sex and gender. So we need a deputy leader who can navigate that debate and represent the views of everybody in the party, both internally and externally. So let me give you an example. I would defend the right of women in the party to be able to self-organise. But this apparently is not a view which is shared by all. We've had, even going back 2018, attempts to stop women from congregating outside our own conference to be able to promote their views. And I think as a party, we need to be bigger than that. We're not going to agree with everybody. We're not even going to like what it is they're saying, but let's use argument. Let's play the ball, not the person. I think you'll find that I have a track record of doing this, and I'm proud to say that I know many people in the party who wish to engage in debate and to overcome the hostile environment. If you think also about, think about the leadership team which you're going to be electing a deputy to. Now, I will be able to work closely with our co-leaders, and one of our
15
co-leaders,
seconds.
Sorry, was that 15 or 30?
15.
One of our co-leaders also has spoken out against LGB Alliance as a hate group. Now, I don't think they are a hate group. Whatever your view on that, I think it's really important that we're able to express difference of opinion and diversity of viewpoint in our leadership team.
You're running over now.
That is what you would be voting for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shara. I'm going to pass over to Zach now. We'll just invite you to unmute.
Thank you very much. Should I go, Kate?
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm Zach Polanski. I'm a London Assembly member. I'm also our national spokesperson for democracy and citizen engagement. First of all, I want to acknowledge Kate's randomizer. That is clearly someone who loves D&D and respect to it. I also want to say welcome to the Scottish Greens in the room. I know that you can't vote, but I do think this election does matter to you for obvious reasons. And I want to acknowledge what Scottish Greens are doing in government and also what they're doing with LGBTIQA rights. And actually, I think that's a model we should aspire to. So I'm delighted that you're here tonight. Just as a way of opening statement, I was just thinking about what can I say that I've not said before. And I was thinking about a recent visit I made when I met some Greens up in York. And I went to a bookshop there called the Portal Bookshop. Now, the Portal Bookshop actually is a D&D bookshop that also describes itself as a queer bookshop, and it has a coffee shop upstairs. And I went with my boyfriend and we just went to check it out. And as soon as we got there and met the owner, they were incredible. And all along the kind of walls were all the different flags: asexual, intersexual, trans flag, LGBT flag, progress flag. And that person gave me a lot of patience and time explaining all the flags. I was genuinely interested, and as interested as I am, I still didn't know all the answers. And we had these amazing discussions about identities and sexualities that were new to me. And I think that's a real spirit in the Green Party, is not to condemn things we don't understand or dismiss them, but actually ask questions in the polite context and make sure that we're always learning. And I love that Amelia Womack, our currently deputy leader, has really taken on that phrase with the current podcast of always learning. And I think that's an attitude and a value we can have. And I want our party to be like that bookshop. I want us to have representation. I want us to be as diverse as those flags on the wall. And I want us to wave those flags. And if I'm going to extend this metaphor, that's waving those flags on the media, having Greens of all identities and sexualities and disabilities and ethnicities out on the airwaves and on TV, speaking clearly and honestly making sure that they're putting those authentic green messages across. And of course, it's not just for media. I want us to be in communities too, talking to those people, and also those people we don't necessarily understand, but having polite and engaging conversations. But within those conversations, we have to be firm about the things we believe in and what is and isn't up for debate. And that is not cancel culture. That is what a political party is, choosing what you believe in and saying those are our red lines. And we know one of our red lines is that we are welcoming to all LGBTIQA people. We are a safe space for LGBTIQA people. And when people breaching that safe space, then there should be consequences. Now, those consequences shouldn't always jump straight to disciplinary action or even expulsion. We should work with people and talk to them. But ultimately, we need to know that when people are being hateful, sitting down and having a coffee with them isn't the final or the first option. And we need to be clear about that and honest about that. I'm so excited for the debate tonight. Ultimately, we need to get more Greens elected. And we do that by being the most diverse, inclusive and progressive party we can be. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zach. Sorry about the slightly frantic nature of that. My cat jumped out of the window right in the middle of your statement, so I had to go and rescue him. So Tyrone, you are up next. I'm just gonna find you in the list. You vanished in my list. Right, there we go.
Cool, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, good. Well, hi everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to these hustings today. I was quite glad because I just got in from work at 7, so there's a little bit rushed. But yeah, my name is Tyrone Scott, and I'm running to be your next deputy leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. And I hope people have had a chance to see some of the other hustings I've read my statements. I'll try not to do the sort of same intro, just speak about myself. But very briefly, I have been a member of the Green Party for 8 years, and in that time, I've actively contributed in our bid to try and grow this party and get more Greens elected, whether that's supporting multiple elections as a volunteer or as a candidate. I've been an active member of the Young Greens, served in our committee for 18 months, and I've worked with the Federation of Young European Greens and went 26 of them last year. I'm an experienced campaigner and activist at heart, and I want to bring my philosophy to community organising to getting more Greens elected. But moving to what we need to do internally too, I'm committed to ensuring our party is open, accessible and inclusive for all our members. And that doesn't just mean having and championing our progressive social policies, but also taking active steps to move us towards that goal. That means having a strong stance against transphobic views, a strong stance against homophobic views, and a strong stance against all forms of discrimination. It also means working very closely with our liberation groups and all of those marginalised communities to understand the barriers that exist, enabling them to engage more, to stand for election, to get elected, or even get involved with the party. Ensure internal party structures and policies reflect the values that we speak about externally. Because we are meant to be the most progressive political party, the party that understands that all of the fights for social justice intersect, and a threat to any of our rights is a threat to all. Yet, unfortunately, we do have a problem in this party that we have to speak about, and a problem that those outside our party see and comment on, and a problem that will stand in our way to electoral success. Overwhelmingly, the British public supports strengthening rights for the trans community to allow the right to self-identify. The government's own public consultation showed overwhelming public support for this. Yet within our own look to threaten those rights, to take those rights away, or ensure no new rights are given. And this is not only deeply painful and damaging for those in the community and the antithesis of social justice, but it's not reflective of the will of the British public. How can we be a progressive party if some look to promote regressive policies? And as deputy leader, I want to ensure that we are championing, defending and protecting our progressive policies on trans, non-binary and all LGBTIQ+ rights at all times. I'm committed to doing this as your deputy leader or not, even as a Green Party member. But I'm really looking forward to these hustings today. Thank you for putting them on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking to you more.
Oh, well, you had 20 seconds left, so thank you for being so concise. So I'm gonna flip it for the first question. So you're actually going to be up first, Tyrone. Let me ask you to unmute again. I've lost everything. Right. you jumped down to the bottom of the list when you were muted. So there we go.
Oh, cool. Sorry
so
about that.
it's totally fine. So I will just put the first question in the chat and I will read it out. So if elected as deputy leader, how do you envision your relationship with the LGBTIQA plus Greens to be? And what actions will you take to support LGBTIQA Greens? You have 2 minutes to answer. Starting now.
Oh. Thank you. That's a really good question. And hopefully I envision my relationship with the LGBTIQ plus Greens to be very, very close. And, I want to have a really close relationship with every single liberation group. I think it's quite clear that within our party, we don't have the diverse representation that we should have across all marginalized communities. And I think that's something that has to change. To get truly electable, we have to reflect the society that we want to represent. And I don't think we currently do. And whether that's on gender, on race, on sexuality, we do not have a diverse range of candidates or people get involved in the party. And whether that's down to barriers in the way, issues of accessibility, issues with some of the rhetoric that goes on within the party, we need to ensure and work very hard to make sure it is accessible and inclusive. And to do that, we have to work closely with our liberation groups and find the answers from them. I don't think any of us as deputy leaders can invoke that we know all the answers to any issues. And I think it's really a dangerous position to put yourself out there and say that. So what's really important is to be to working with every group that is there within the Green Party, listening to their issues and working to develop a stronger party and a more safe and accessible party for all our members. The actions I'd look to take to support the community is really outlined there through that close relationship, but also championing those policies that we have. I'm really, really proud that our party has really progressive policies on trans rights, non-binary rights, and all LGBTIQ+ rights, but those are still under threat from externally from our party. Unfortunately, we've seen with the Tory leadership candidacy right now, where the trans rights issue has been seen as some kind of political point scoring, which is just awful to see. And that rhetoric is then spreading throughout the general public. And when that discourse does happen, we need to make sure that we stand proud and firm in what we believe in as a party. Thank you. So we need to ensure that within our party, hopefully, we can all be looking to champion these progressive views. We've voted multiple times, we've mandated them through multiple leadership elections. I believe in them, and I'm sure we've seen that most of our members in the British public, so I want to champion, defend, and protect them at all times.
Thank you very much, Tyrone. So up next will be Zach.
Thank you very much. So the answer to this question for me is, well, I am an LGBTIQA Green as a gay man. Now, that doesn't mean that I understand every single person in our beautiful family, because it's a diverse and complicated family and there's nuances. And even other gay men, I obviously have differences, never mind someone who might be asexual or intersex or trans or non-binary or whatever there might be. But I think ultimately it's all about, can you stop? Can you listen? Can you seek to understand? And can you work together? And I'm so proud of the work that I've already done with LGBTIQA Greens, whether it's just last weekend going along to Trans Pride and marching through the streets of London. I was incredibly proud to meet some new members who had come along, whether it's a conference, whether it's some new LGBT members that came along who also happened to be Jewish Greens. And there was a beautiful intersectional moment where they came for dinner with us. Or whether it's the work that I did, for instance, hosting the fundraiser at conference, one of those funner moments of being an LGBTQI Green. So all of that, I think, really, I'd want to continue as your deputy leader. And in terms of how to support other LGBT Greens, again, I think I'm already doing that. So when I look at the recent local elections, I went to every single target constituency in London twice, and I gave extra effort to make sure that we got LGBT Greens like Rhea Patel, like Nate Higgins and Danny Keeling, all elected. And that was fantastic news too. And I would make sure that I was out there and campaigning and especially championing our diverse candidates. And then finally, I think there's the work I'm doing nationally and on the London Assembly on LGBT issues, which is obviously helpful to any LGBT Green because they're able to promote it. So a quick whistle-stop tour is I seconded a motion recently around LGBT domestic violence and making sure that we have more transparent data from the Metropolitan Police. I seconded a motion calling for 0 new HIV infections by 2030, and the mayor then supported
15 seconds left.
I've been supporting LGBT refugees, and then most importantly of all, or not most importantly, but kind of the biggest focus I've been giving to, maybe I can talk about this later, is cleaning up Pride, getting rid of fossil fuels and making sure it's a community grassroots event that isn't corporate and isn't dictated to from the top.
Almost perfect.
Almost.
Perfect timing. Okay, up. Last but not least on this question will be Shara. Let me just invite you to unmute and should be able to spotlight you. There you go.
Oh, great.
I'm
Yes, I had a spotlight of your cat in the last one, Kate. So, which was very nice to see. Okay, shall I begin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. This is a really great question, and I'll start by saying that the Green Party has always been more than the sum of its parts, and I do think we've faced a little bit of a difficulty sometimes through siloed working, you might call it. Because through siloed working, it's all well and good people coming together because they want to fight for a particular cause. But I think sometimes we can lose sight of the bigger picture. The bigger picture this last week, I think, which is very much on people's minds, is the impending existential climate emergency. So what I'd very much like to do, working hand in glove with LGBTIQs, QI plus Greens, is to focus on some of those external campaigns and how it affects all of us equally. But besides that, I think it's really important, and it's important to explain what I think I can bring to the Green Party as your deputy leader. We are first and foremost going to be spokespersons, call us primary or secondary spokespersons, and there are going to be big topics of the day that we're going to have to pronounce upon. Not always that we've got sufficient detailed policy on. So I see my role also as navigating some of those questions. Take the conversion therapy bill. Now, I think it's all well and good for us to talk in broad brush strokes. We can all be against conversion therapy as such, but when you go into the detail, it's not clear what the answer should be. So if you take somebody who may be presenting with gender dysphoria, for example, and they approach or get referred to a therapist, well, if you don't frame the
15
law,
seconds.
If you don't frame the law accurately, that individual, simply through going through therapy, that therapist might be at risk of breaking the law either way, because the way you've defined conversion therapy, they can't win. They're doing conversion one way, or if they're trying another way, they're also guilty.
You're out of time now.
Law. Thank you. Okay,
I will just run the randomizer for the second question. It's come up Zach, Tyrone, and Shara. So Zach, you'll be up first. So I'll just get that ready. Second question is, when did you last volunteer to help get an LGBTIQA+ candidate elected to public office? And will you assist in future campaigns regardless of the outcome of the deputy leader election?
Yes, absolutely. Next question, apart from I just want to bring something else up. Our policy is very clear. Our position is very clear. And I can't quite believe what I just heard. And it's always dangerous as a politician. You never want to feign outrage. You never want to kind of ramp up the stakes, because I'm aware that these are people's lives. Conversion therapy in any scenario is never acceptable. And I can feel anger inside me, and that's anger for other people, and that's anger for friends, or even people I don't know that they've just had to listen to what they've just listened to. But if I'm really honest, this is personal. I'm a gay man who grew up during Section 28. I know what it's like when your school teachers don't provide a space that feels safe. I know what it's like even now in 2022 when I have the privilege to have a boyfriend that I walk through cities with, but you squeeze hands with them just a little bit tighter when you walk through a crowd, sometimes not entirely sure if you're safe. And I'm saying this as a privileged gay man, never mind if you're in a minority as vulnerable as many trans people are other minorities too. And I just think it's outrageous that anyone even in the party, let alone someone running for deputy leader, would even suggest that in any scenario, in any context, conversion therapy would ever be acceptable. And I don't want to create a faux argument about that, but I would strongly suggest to one of my other candidates that they retract those remarks, they apologize for those remarks, and that they consider carefully the effect that they're having, because this is much bigger and more important than trying to score a few cheap, narrow political points. And I'll leave that there.
Thank you, Zach. Me remind myself, it's Tyrone up next. So I will spotlight you, and I'll start your time there.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to second what was just said then as well. I think it's very important to add some solidarity to that statement completely. So just start with that. And I think even just to sort of follow on from that, you know, if we speak about our role is to be potentially primary or secondary spokespeople for the party, then it's absolutely paramount. And what we're doing is championing the views of our party. We've shown through multiple policy motions, multiple conferences, and our strong progressive views on all of these rights, on our trans rights, non-binary rights, and LGBTIQ plus rights. This is the party policy. So as a national primary or secondary spokesperson, that is what we have to champion. I mean, that's what I'd be proud to champion. But I don't think our position is to say, as a primary or secondary spokesperson, I'll then open up a debate about an issue that we have a strong position on. I absolutely agree with what Zach said before, that a political party can have a strong position on an issue and draw red lines. And that is what we've done and will continue to do with any motions that get proposed at conference. I'm confident our progressive party and forward-thinking party will continue to make sure that either the progressive ones pass, those wrecking amendments and so forth do not. So yeah, that's our role as primary or secondary spokespeople. And I really don't understand how it could be anything other, any other major party where the leader of the party was just going against everything that was voted on in conference, wouldn't be there for very long. So it's very clear what our job is in that position. And I'm very sorry I've detracted a little bit from the second question. In regards to when I last volunteered to help a candidate from the community, I guess through multiple elections, there's candidates who would have been part of the community. I guess in myself, I would have been running more myself, I guess, a lot more in the last few elections. As the Young Greens campaigns and communications officer, we supported multiple candidates from the community and also others who are in the community. I'm not sure in. Oh, thank you. So I guess, yeah, regardless of deputy leader or not, I'm completely committed to working with everyone from marginalised communities and especially this community to get elected. As deputy, I'd look to use my position of influence and hopefully a bit more standing to be able to use that in local communities as well and support any candidates that I can who are from any marginalised community. So yeah, really clear on that. Sorry, in the first 90 seconds. Thank you, sorry. Thanks.
Very much appreciated. And up last on this one is Shara. I will just unmute you. And you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, I will stand, and I have got a strong track record of campaigning on behalf of all Green Party candidates, however they identify and however they choose to identify in an election. Just to respond to Zach, if I may, I think it's really good for people to get emotional and maybe even angry, but for the right reasons. All of you who were here and witnessed what I said, and if you wish to track the record, I was actually very clear about bad framing of law. I'm not in favour of conversion therapy, but I'm not in favour of a badly framed law which will end up putting therapists in a lose-lose situation, because that's actually the way that the law is at risk of being framed. And we don't have policy that goes into sufficient detail. And what I'm against is sloganeering. Both candidates have talked about being progressive, and it's much better to drill down into what you mean by being progressive. It isn't progressive to affirm somebody's gender when they're not competent as a child, for example, when we've seen a 6,000-fold increase in GIDS referrals for girls over a 5-year period. I don't regard that as something which the Green Party shouldn't be asking questions around. Why is that exponential increase in referrals of teenagers, for example, to GIDS clinic? And is it the case that the Green Party is in favour of gender affirming, which is almost like unquestioning affirmation of somebody's gender dysphoria, or are they in favour rather, and this is where the policy comes in, of proper mental talk therapy? And actually we are. So I put it to you
15
that
seconds.
I am the candidate who actually understands Green Party policy and isn't just going to bandy around slogans as if I do understand it, without actually reflecting on the deep damage we are doing to children who have been wrongly advised. We've had
You're out of
2
time there.
cases of disciplinary action against the Webberleys. Just reflect on that.
So I am actually, I've had a few messages that suggest that we should take another run at that question. I am obviously, as a trans person myself, have fairly strong feelings about what was being discussed, but I think it's really important that we do actually answer the questions that have been given to us by the group, our liberation group at large. So I'm going to ask, if possible, if Zach, would you mind taking a run at the question, which is, and let me just spotlight you. When did you last volunteer to help get an LGBTIQA plus Greens candidate elected to public office, and will you assist in future campaigns regardless of the outcome of the deputy leader election? Thank you.
Yeah, so I campaign for Greens all the time, regardless of their sexuality, but I do give particular emphasis and love to LGBT candidates. I want to see more of them elected for office. And I would just say this, actually, that I was in Bow, where we got Natalie Bianfe elected as a Green councillor. Now, I don't know what Shiraz was doing. He may have been there lots and I just didn't see him. But actually, I went over a couple of times and was really happy to see her elected. The only time that I saw Shiraz there was actually in a photograph when she won, in the background celebrating. Similar in the London Assembly elections, lots of people on here I know worked really hard. We were out every day doing long hours. Again, I don't know what Shiraz might have been doing. He might have been tweeting or something like that, but I certainly didn't see him in the entire campaign. And that was a long campaign. Although I did see him the night I was elected when he turned up for the photograph again. Now, I'm being careful not to go into petty politics here, although I'm going to be honest, he's certainly hit an emotional chord tonight. So some of that may be coming from that place. But I think the important thing here is that we are there to get people elected and we are there to get representation, and we are not there on some kind of ego trip to push our own narrow agenda. In fact, he tweeted in June, I think it was 70 times, 63 of those times were about gender. And then several of those times were about general politics. Only one time in the whole of June did Shiraz talk about the Green Party, and that was in a negative sense. In me, you'll get a deputy leader who supports our candidates, who supports the Green Party. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing to say, but it feels in this deputy leadership race that supporting the Green Party is not a prerequisite. So I'll start there. I support the Green Party and I support our candidates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. And I believe Tyrone was up next in this question. So I will just replace the spotlight and ask you to unmute, and your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. And I'll try to answer the question better this time, so got distracted. I mean, I guess, again, I will be clear that I have done things and helped and been part of groups to volunteer LGBTIQ plus candidates, and I maybe being a touch uncomfortable because I'm not sure of everyone's status of, being out, and I think we need to be really careful about that. But I guess what I would say is, even I've been very much committed to always promoting positive views and positive policies in these things. We ran all our platforms on a very queer positive platform in our local elections, and we had many members from the LGBTIQ plus community involved in our campaigns heavily because we ensured it was open and inclusive for all our members. I would be dedicated to continually supporting members from all communities and the LGBTIQ plus community to get elected, and to ensuring that they can get elected and can run for election in a safe manner and safe from potential views within their party, and hopefully not, but from maybe from those within society too. We need to ensure that we're using our platforms as deputy leader to support the community and also support and promote our policies on this. One of the reasons I joined the Green Party is because we have the most progressive policies on more social issues, but especially on LGBTIQ plus rights. It's so important to myself due to many reasons and many of the people around me, and it's so important that we continue to champion and defend those rights and ensure that people can get elected from all marginalized groups. So again, for reasons I don't want to get into too many specificities about particular candidates, however, absolutely will continue to support candidates from all communities, especially from this community, and as deputy I commit to doing so as well.
Thank you very much. I had forgotten to mute myself that time. So up last on that question is Shara. So let me just ask you to unmute and replace your spotlight. And you have 2 minutes on this question starting now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kate. I will fight for the election of any and all Green candidates who've been properly selected and have done. I actually find it really quite shocking that Zach should have attacked me like that. Zach, you were the one, just to address you directly, thanking me for my support and my election campaigning on the day in which you were duly elected. And I don't know why you would turn around and say that. Yes, I also helped in Tower Hamlets. An officer was thanking me for getting signatures of non-target candidates and being one of the only ones to have done so. And I was also helping in another local borough as well. I think the thing that this demonstrates is a kind of a disdain, if I may, a really quite insulting and damaging disdain towards any and all Green Party candidates and members in the party, who, frankly, all of us are standing on the shoulders of decades of work. Our biggest resource is human resource. And we disrespect those candidates, whatever minute, hour, days they spend on campaigning. We really damage the vitality, integrity of our party if we disrespect those, including myself. And I may not have been out and about, or especially not tweeting about it as much as you, Zach, but please don't diminish my efforts. You diminish my efforts, you diminish the efforts of everybody in the party, including those who have helped.
15 seconds.
And just to reassure you, I will fight to get Zach elected anytime, any day of the week. And to remind him of something he said last time, a few hustings ago, when somebody goes low, Greens go high. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. So we are on to our third question, which is, and I will just say who is up first. It is Shara, Zach, and then Tyrone for this one. So Shara, you are still on. Let me just ask you to unmute. This question is, this October, our sister party, the Scottish Greens, will debate whether to make a formal statement disaffiliating from the Green Party of England and Wales due to the level of transphobia within the party. What do you think the ramifications of this would be for the party? So Shara, you will have 2 minutes starting now.
Well, I'm not convinced that this motion will succeed, but I don't think we should be complacent. There are clearly some members in the Scottish Green Party who feel disaffected. But what I will say on this is as follows. We have to distinguish between transphobia, which does exist and should be tackled, and transphobic smear campaigns. I know many great members of the party, especially women, who have felt driven out by transphobic smear campaigns. 2 years ago, we had Andrea Carey-Fuller standing as deputy leader. She's no longer in the party. And I think we really have to reflect on the way we do politics in this party. And I would say to the Scottish Greens, and if I see Ross Greer is here, pick up the phone, let's arrange a meeting, we can talk. We can talk about the things that you think are causing division, but we must. And it's not the case, as was said earlier, that the Green Party should be following in every trajectory the Scottish Green Party, and particularly on gender identity. I think there was a big mistake made, for example, in losing a great MSP in Andy Whiteman. And why did he feel he had to resign? And I think this tells you something about a rotten political culture that is sometimes affecting Greens as well. Andy Whiteman resigned because he felt unable to vote for an amendment which simply would have said that a woman who has been the victim of a rape, for example, has the right to choose the sex of her medical examiner. Whereas Scottish Greens
15 seconds.
were in the camp who said to vote for that amendment would be transphobic. You should be asking your deputy leader candidates where they stand on that political issue. I'm proud to say that I put the dignity of women ahead
Time
of
up.
transphobic smear campaigns.
I have had an inclusion point that, especially for an LGBTIQA Greens husting, that essentially a cis man telling LGBTIQA members what transphobia is grossly offensive. And as a trans person, I do agree with that. I think that you really need to allow trans people to speak out, and as an inclusion point, that is really important to recognise. So up next on that is Zach. So I'm just going to spotlight you, and yes, please keep in mind the question that has been asked in your answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of my proudest moments as a Green was last year going to COP26, where I had lots of important, exciting meetings, both at the Scottish Parliament with their Net Zero Committee and also with Glasgow Council. But by far, my favourite moment during COP26 was a panel I was at one evening in Bonjour. Bonjour is a queer workers cooperative bar in Glasgow. And there I was on a panel hosted by the amazing Kim Long, who's a councillor in Glasgow for the Greens, but also Amelia Womack, who needs no introduction, Alice Bankunka, one of our MEPs, and Patrick Harvey, the co-leader of the Scottish Greens. And we talked all evening on this panel about LGBT issues and green issues. And it felt united, it felt exciting. It felt like the crowd could see that there was a better vision and a better hope, and we were getting there. But over that whole evening, a shadow was cast, which was what is going on in the Green Party of England and Wales. And at the time, with a spokesperson speaking out against our party policy several times and saying several contentious things. And it felt particularly for me and Amelia, and I have huge respect for Amelia, she's been an amazing deputy leader, like we almost needed to keep apologising for the Green Party of England and Wales within our answers. So let me say this. I love the Scottish Green Party and I desperately want them to stay. And as deputy leader, I would work hard to make that happen. But that's obviously not my decision. We believe in independence and devolution. And I can completely understand why this motion has been put forward. So whilst I'd say to Scottish Greens who are on this call or any Scottish Greens, I really want you to stay, I can completely understand why enough is enough. And I hope this is a really loud alarm call to England and Wales that things need to change. In fact, it needs to be more than an alarm call. The alarm has been ringing for a long time. This needs to be a last resort where we absolutely need to make sure that as a party, we are taking action to say transphobia cannot be tolerated in our party, not even from a member, let alone a spokesperson or a senior elected person, and certainly not from a deputy leader.
Thank you very much. So last but not least on this question will be Tyrone.
Complicated to try to mute myself. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I mean, it's got huge ramifications. Whether it goes through or not, I think, you know, whether it goes through, you know, GPEW, massive ramifications. Even if not, because even the conversation being there, it only shows that there's a feeling within our Scottish Greens, a genuine and real feeling. But also it carries on the story publicly that we as a party have a problem with transphobia or are transphobic, and that gets picked up by the public, and that's deeply, deeply damaging and has huge and wide ramifications. However, they can be correct to make this assumption. And why? Because we'll see continually, even now throughout our hustings and today, you know, we do have a problem in the sense that we are not all championing our progressive policies as national spokespeople or potentially as primary or secondary spokespeople. We have seen already, as I said in my opening statement, that overwhelmingly the British public support strengthening rights, at least protecting our current rights, but strengthening rights for the trans community. How can we as a progressive Green Party not be behind those policies? Usually when we are pushing our progressive policies as the Green Party, we then have to convince the British public that they are also behind these things as well. The British public are overwhelmingly, at this point almost, appearing more progressive than the Green Party. Now, if we are not seen as the most progressive party, it's damaging to the very core of why we exist. So this is massively about trans rights, and we protect and defend them at all costs. But this has deeply damaging ramifications for all of our policies and the very reason why we exist. We exist because we stand up for all forms of social justice, because we understand that they all intersect in our fight for climate justice. We understand that marginalized communities, especially the trans communities, are getting attacked and vilified more than most, and because we stand up for that. And if people start thinking otherwise and seeing that otherwise from us as a party, then what do we stand for?
15 seconds.
Thank you. We have to really, really strongly and proudly defend those. And that's why it's so important that you or any deputy that you elect is proud to stand up, defend and protect these progressive policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyrone, you're up first on the next question, so don't go away. The next question, the list will be Tyrone, Shara, and then Zach. The next question is, how willing are you to compromise the GPEW, Green Party of England and Wales, philosophical basis and policy position in the production of our next general election manifesto? So you have 2 minutes starting now. I'm terribly sorry, I didn't invite you to unmute yourself. I will restart your timer. You good?
Great. I think it's because I muted myself straight after. Yeah.
So you're good to go.
Thank you. I mean, it's a really good question. And for the most part, I very much hope that we don't have to compromise too much on our philosophical basis and policy positions. You know, one of the reasons I've joined this party is because I'm so proud of these policy positions. And I also want to ensure that what we do represents the will of our members, because once you start deflecting from that as a political party, I think you get in a dangerous position. We look right now with what's happened with the Labour Party on things around proportional representation, an issue that they continually seem to deny us of. And you know, they're members, you know, of everyone who voted a majority of that, and they don't put these things within their manifestos. And with that, you have distrust with those members. So, you know, as a deputy leader, I'm led or would be led by the will of the members, you know, what they voted through as policy positions and what our agreed philosophical basis is. And if I to get to the point that I feel like our policy positions or philosophical basis do not agree and do not align with myself anymore, then it's my job, I guess, to step down as deputy and no longer pursue that role. Because my role is to champion the Green Party's policies and views. It's not to run my agenda, run my own agenda, or seek my own goals, or seek the power that one may wish, or anything like that. I think my position is, as was rightly said before, is as a primary or secondary spokesperson of the party. And it's important in a spokesperson role to ensure that you're looking to champion those views. So I want to work with liberation groups to ensure that we have the right policies in our manifestos, to make sure our policies are moving in the right direction, they are progressive, they are representative of the people that they're meant to represent, and that our social policies that we want to enact as hopefully one day a party of government reflects the will of our party members and those in those communities, and only working very closely with our liberation groups can ensure that we do so. So hopefully, I would not have to compromise too much on the philosophical basis or policy positions as I understand them, because as I understand them, they're the reason I've joined this party. And I hope that as a deputy leader, I would continue to champion those policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So up next will be Shara. Let me just spotlight you. And you have 2 minutes to answer this question starting now.
Thanks, Kate. I don't see that there should be any necessity or reason for us to have to compromise on our philosophical basis. I think it's an absolutely great statement of value, ethos, and politics. I've written a couple of Green Party books, and that was always one of my first points of call. And I've often been very involved in party policy as well. I was a London policy coordinator for 5 years, and I was active on the national policy stage as well. So let's not have to compromise our constitution and our philosophical basis. I think it's actually a fantastic, terrific guide. One of the questions that has been running through this Hustings is to do with inclusivity. And what I'm arguing for is all inclusivity. not just inclusivity of those who remain left in the party. I do want to firmly remind Zach that if you're going to continue to make false allegations about me, the latest one being that I have contravened party policy, I think you should evidence them. With respect to an earlier remark about transphobia from somebody in the room, I absolutely agree with you that those people who feel most affected by prejudice should be sounded out and should be properly regarded. But I do think it's important, as a matter of definition and linguistics, that we define our terms clearly. And unfortunately, I have been the target of transphobic smear campaigns. I know this to my cost. A member of the Scottish Green Party even was attempting to weaponize our disciplinary process, and they were suspended. So when
15 seconds
make these allegations, they're unable to back them up, and they may even be found to have been guilty of a transphobic smear campaign. So that's what I mean by that, and we have evidence of that. So let's overcome this. Let's be
time now.
united.
Okay, thank you. So up last but not least on this question will be Zach. So I will invite you to unmute.
Thank you.
And spotlight you. And I'll start now.
I won't be nauseating, but I'm very proud of my boyfriend Richie for a whole host of reasons, mainly that he's an incredible human being. But one of the reasons that I think really fills me with pride is his job as a physiotherapist in the community, where he goes out to meet palliative patients, so people who are end of life, and works with them. And the whole time he does this, he proudly wears a rainbow lanyard. One of the other candidates would suggest from tweets that this would be advertising his sexuality or somehow not something an NHS worker should do. And I'm proud of every single NHS worker that gets out there and represents, because I know from being a young gay man a few years ago now, how important representation is. And we only need to watch a series like Heartstopper and see the difference that makes to a whole generation of young people when they see and hear people of their sexuality or people who are just different or queer on TV or radio. And I think that's vitally important. To answer the question, I'm not just going to reference a musical because it's the LGBT Hustings, but I can only think of Hamilton, that if you stand for nothing, but what will you fall for? And I think we always need to be ready to compromise any party that we stand for if things go too far. And I think Sian Berry gave a brilliant example of this when she stood down by saying that actually there's a point where it becomes institutional defensiveness, and defending the institution should never be bigger than defending what is right. Now, I'm not saying that people should, just resign instantly and never fight. I'm not saying Sian did that for a second, but I do think that, again, there has to be red lines and things that you're willing to resign for. Having said that, though, on a much more positive note, I don't feel that I would need to compromise. I think the Green Party of England and Wales genuinely has so many progressive policies, particularly around LGBT rights. And this is almost what is the tinge of sadness around this
15 seconds.
Hustings tonight, because actually we should be known for doing that. We should be known for being the party that has the best LGBT policies and social justice policies. But too often we are known for our internal politics that has been divisive. And as deputy leader, I'd certainly
You're
want to
out
change
of time
that
there.
by being loud and clear about what we can be proud for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. I will just run the randomizer again. And Zach, you'll be up first this time. Zach, Tyrone, and then Shara. The next question is, I will just put it in the chat. Can you identify an LGBTIQA plus Greens campaign from the last 2 years and explain what you've done to support it? If not, can you explain a broader LGBTIQA plus national campaign and what you've done to support that? And I will just invite you to unmute.
Thank you. So I've got lots of answers for this, but rather than try and push lots, I'll just focus on one. I think we work strongest as a party when we ask questions about who are the most vulnerable people in this situation and how can we amplify their voices. And LGBT people, particularly trans people, and particularly trans youth, and particularly trans homeless youth, as some of the most vulnerable people in society. But actually, I think one level that could be even more vulnerable are LGBT refugees, and particularly around this government's new horrendous policy of offshoring and deporting refugees to Rwanda. And I I'm really proud when LGBT Greens have got together with the spokesperson Benali Hamdash, who is of course LGBT himself, but also doing incredible work around migrants and refugees. And it's just been amazing to as simply retweet that and to amplify that. And I would say to any member, that is a huge thing that we can all do, is just make sure that we're amplifying voices, especially when the voices they're speaking up for or with marginalized communities. I also took it a step further, which I accept not everyone can do, but I was proud to do, which is I took it to the London Assembly and I passed a motion condemning this government's treatment of refugees. And in that motion specifically talked about the work that LGBT Greens have been doing around supporting refugees. I said I wouldn't name all of them, but the other one I'm really proud of as well is the HIV motion that I mentioned. And I'm really pleased to see Daniel Laycock is bringing a motion forward to conference. And I just use this 10 seconds just to encourage everyone to support that motion, because HIV in 2022 is still massively affecting people, particularly the idea that if you are undetectable, that means you're untransmissible. And there's still a huge stigma around HIV. And I was really pleased in the chamber when I explained that undetectable equals untransmissible. The Terence Higgins Trust got in touch with me to say that's the clearest they've ever heard it explained by a politician. And I'm really proud when I can use that platform to explain, to amplify, and to get messages across. And I think LGBT Greens do that brilliantly. And I'll always be an ally in doing that.
Thank you very much. Up next will be Tyrone. So I'm going to invite you to unmute this time. And put your spotlight on, and your time starts now.
Thank you. I mean, I guess the most thing I've probably been involved in, especially within the Greens, has been pushing for trans inclusion and fighting transphobia. That's been something I've been involved in since the time I've really got involved with the Young Green Party back in probably 2015, 16 now. And sitting on the executive committee, we ensured that we created a very trans inclusive environment and did what we could to call out what we felt was transphobic rhetoric within the party. And during that time, there was many attempts to push through conference motions that repealed and weakened the trans rights that we have and we really are proud of within this party. And as part of the Young Greens and being part and being present at conference, we tried to ensure that that did not happen. I've been a supporter of all the, well, most, if not every campaign policy motion on trans rights over the last few years. I've assured I've attended my regional parties when there's been attempts at wrecking amendments or other things that look to negate our fight for trans inclusion and the fight against transphobia. I'm committed to continuing to do that as a leader, because as I've said in the previous answer, it's not just about what's massively about the damage it's doing to the community, it's doing huge damage to our party. It's just absolutely a problem that needs to end. And I think at this point, we can't shy away from the fact that it is a problem, that it is an issue within the party. And it is something that we need to look to stop. It's something that I will continue to work for because it will not get us electoral success. We keep talking about wanting to get Greens elected, but nobody will vote for a party that will regress on trans rights. As we've seen, the consultation overwhelmingly, the British public supported essentially every single strengthening of the trans rights and at least the retainment the trans rights that already exist. And that is a support that will continue to grow as the country becomes more progressive. If we become more aggressive, we've completely lost our chance. And in the pending and current and existing climate catastrophe that we're living in right now, there's no chance that we can lose that chance. So we need to ensure that we push for trans inclusion, fight against transphobia for the community, for the people, and also for the party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally on this question will be Shara. So I'll invite you to unmute. And I will place your spotlight, and you have 2 minutes on this question starting now.
Thank you. There are a number of campaigns which I've been supporting morally and otherwise. For example, the promulgation of gay rights, particularly in Europe. We've got a great deal of discrimination still faced by same-sex couples in Hungary, for example, and closer to home as well. I've been quite involved in policy, national policy, and just sort of teasing out implications of LGBTIQ policy. I mean, for example, you know, we do need to be careful when we're talking about progressive, what we actually mean by that. I don't regard it as progressive, for example, to put a motion to conference, and you might want to ask what the other candidates think about this and whether they supported it or voted for or against it. We had a motion earlier this year, as recently as spring 2020, called an intersectional approach to diversity, and it would have, at a stroke, suspended or expelled, by another name, members of our party who had signed an International Women's Declaration. Now, whatever your views on the nuances of that declaration, I don't think it's actually helping the Green Party at all to expel or exclude decent Greens. This is not a winning strategy. So I would like us to reflect very deeply on what kind of inclusive party we want and what is consistent with the recommendations of our own Diverse Matters report. And I put it to you so far even that I am the candidate who is most in step with the recommendations of Diverse Matters. We need to open up
15 seconds
of that report forum for discussion. Even in the last hour or so, you've heard insults and false allegations which have not been returned. And that is the kind of attitude you need in a mature deputy leader.
Okay, thank you, Shara, for that. Okay, up first on the next one will be Tyrone, then Shara, and then Zach. The next question, we'll see how long the next question takes, but it may be our last question. And this question is, what will you do to help trans liberation within the party and in general? And said, this goes to Tyrone first. So I'll invite you to unmute.
Oh.
And replace
I'm in.
spotlight.
Thank you.
And your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I mean, it's difficult because I'm not sure what else I can say really to not try and just repeat what I've said before. But it's an affirmed commitment to use my platform and use any of the tools that may be given to you as a deputy leader and what comes with that to ensure that not only are we championing those progressive policies, but we're working with our trans community, working to understand firstly, what the barriers are to getting involved with the party more. And I can imagine some of those will be some of the rhetoric that's going on involved in the party and the feeling of not feeling welcome within that party, working to try and make sure that people do feel welcome in that party. And that starts by having a deputy leader who's very, very clear on wanting to affirm those rights, because those rights are human rights. And I feel a bit sad that we have to speak about them so much, not only right now in this hustings, which is obviously very relevant, but throughout the multiple hustings and throughout multiple leadership elections, because these over the last few years, because these are human rights, and that's something that we also need to make clear as a party. So that's something I'll continue to do. I don't have the largest platform as I am right now, but I've still tried to use this platform as much as possible to promote trans rights and all LGBTIQ plus rights. I may have my own agendas at this time. I have limited resources, so I could be very clearly just focused on trying to ensure I can maybe achieve my aims to then hopefully get us to electoral success and try and keep myself out the firing line. But that's absolutely not the right thing to do. We need to stand up and show solidarity with all of those within our communities, and that includes our trans communities. And I will continue to do that as deputy leader, not as deputy leader, and even if I'm not a member of the Green Party, because it's what I believe in. And what I believe in is ensuring that we have social justice for all our communities, and that starts with making sure that we have trans liberation and liberation, and that's why we have liberation groups in the first place. We need to support them, help them grow, and help them grow within the party, outside the party, and throughout society. Remove those barriers and make sure that at least our Green Party is the welcoming party we want it to be, and work to make society as welcoming as we know it can be too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Up next is Shara. So I'll ask you to unmute.
Okay, could I have the question again, please?
What will you do to help trans liberation within the party and in general? And I will just, let me play spotlight, there we go. And your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I think the key answer to this is to be honest. And I see myself as a friend and an ally, but a critical friend. So when we look at detransition rates, for example, when we look at outcomes from the Gender Identity Clinic nationally, we should be arguing for looking at the data. And even the outgoing health secretary did a rather good job in post, short-lived though it was, to gain access to that data while securing privacy rights. Because we are nothing if not an evidence-based party. And so we shouldn't assume what trans liberation looks like. We also need to take account of negative outcomes, because trans liberation includes the detrans population as well. They are also individuals who may have been very badly bruised, both psychologically and physically, by an experience where, for example, they were not competent to judge and later regret. So I want the Green Party to be help free everybody and to liberate everybody, including those who regret and need assistance, medical and otherwise. And that is really the point behind one of my earlier comments, which is to protect everybody. And so if we're framing law on the conversion therapy bill, we really must depart from slogans. I mean, I didn't go into politics just to chant a slogan and expect the answer to come out of that and to deride everybody who disagrees with me without digging deep. I mean, we've become very fond of saying trans women are women, but that's a statement of gender identity. And to conflate gender identity with sex actually causes a lot of
15
confusion
seconds.
and can end up producing bad law. So I am the candidate who is not afraid to tackle difficult intellectual problems and to develop sophisticated political solutions, not just slogans.
You're out of time. Okay. And up last on that question, which is, what will you do to help trans liberation within the party and in general, will be Zach. And
Thank you very
just,
much, Kate.
Before Zach starts, just another reminder of the inclusion point raised earlier, that there is quite a large amount of problems with cisgender individuals defining what transphobia is.
Thank you, Kate. And I obviously endorse that point too. I think the first thing I'll do, and I will continue to do, is amplify voices, particularly of trans people, of NB friends, of anyone who has a diverse identity, to let them speak about their identity. So I'm never speaking just for people, it's with people, and also to keep a commitment to keep understanding things too. Had a brilliant conversation at Trans Pride with a member of the LGBT committee about some of the things that I don't fully understand. So intersex, for instance, is not something that I'm as up on as I want to be. So that's about me taking personal responsibility to learn more, to understand more. So if I'm speaking on these issues, I fully know what I'm talking about. And also to amplify the voices of allies. So Tyrone, I would absolutely put in that category. If I'm deputy leader, I'd love to hear Tyrone more often, more visibly, speaking loudly and clearly for diverse communities and the LGBT community as well. I'll defend Stonewall. It hasn't come up this meeting, but another candidate has often attacked Stonewall in these hustings when it's 0.01% of our budget. And I think it does vital work. And I think more than anything, the symbol that is needed, that we will defend Stonewall for these work because we stand with LGBT people, is vitally important. And finally, I'll take on this point about what is progressive and is it a slogan? Well, no, it's not a slogan. Progressive is quite clear. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are not progressive. In fact, I've spent a lot of the day, as the Green Party account have, talking about how right-wing they are. Yet some of Sharar's policies seem to be to the right of them. Progressive is not being to the right of Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. It is about being left or left of centre. It's about being inclusive. It's about creating safe spaces. It's about listening to people. It's about not being nice, but it's about being kind. It's about being firm in that kindness. And that includes telling you that saying you need a critical friend to trans people is absolutely absurd. Trans people, some of them, are the most vulnerable people in our society. They don't need critical friends. They need people to stand up for them, not contrarian people to create hypothetical arguments about their identities because it's something they enjoy in some sort of philosophical debating society. They need people who will proudly stand with them and speak up for them. And more than anything, I will be there.
So sorry, I forgot to give you your 15-second warning, but you've gone past the time.
That's okay. I've got another 10 minutes in me, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Zach. as we've only got 15 minutes left, I am going to go now to closing statements, just so that we do have enough time for people to round out what they've said, and just a reminder that there is another candidate rolling up, because I keep forgetting his surname, Nick Humberstone, who is unable to be here tonight. So please go and read his statement to make sure that you know all of our potential candidates. I'm just going to randomize the list. So it's going to go Zach, Tyrone and Shara. You're going to have 2 minutes for your closing statement. I will invite you to unmute, Zach.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for chairing tonight, and thank you everyone for coming. We often talk about pride being a protest, and it absolutely is. So when I give this caveat, I want to say, first of all, it should always be a protest, and we should always remember its roots. And it can be a celebration, and it can be fun too, to recognise where we've come. And I'm aware this Hustings has not felt like much of a celebration. It has felt like firefighting. It's felt like we've talked about a lot of the problems in the party, and that's only right, and I'm not apologising for that. I think it's entirely appropriate that we put things right. I also would like in my closing statement to put a little bit of hope, a little bit of vision there. And I'm reminded of one of my best friends in life, who's a guy called Ricky Beadle Blair. Now, he's a Jamaican-British writer, an LGBT activist. And he has this amazing thing where when people say, oh, why do we need men and women and non-binary and all these different identities? And he always says, is it too much that everyone has their own letterbox on their house? Is it too much that everyone has an individual and unique contribution to have? And that everyone just respects that. And rather than insisting people are bulked together as one community or one group, and we define other people, we show respect and tolerance around other people's identities. Now, I'm always nervous about the word tolerance, because we shouldn't just be tolerant. We should be respectful, we should be inclusive, and we should embrace. But if we're talking about the lowest bar there is, I think we need to get to tolerance. And so my hope and vision for the party is that I think, well, first of all, I want you to vote for me. I think as deputy leader, especially if I win on a big mandate, you will be giving a clear indication, both to this party in England and Wales and to the Scottish Green Party, that we are a party that stand up for LGBT rights, and we will always stand up with them. And with that mandate, I will go out on TV and media, I will be on people's doorsteps, I will be in communities, speaking clearly and authentically for the change we need. And more than anything, I will be out there with Carla Denyer, an LGBT candidate and our co-leader, speaking up with her to make sure that we get her elected in Bristol West, because the best way we further our LGBT agenda is being a right-on party that wins more Green MPs. Thank you very much.
Excellent timing. Up next was Tyrone. So for your closing statement, Tyrone, I'll ask you to unmute. I will spotlight you. If it decides it wants to. There we go. And here are your 2 minutes now.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you. Thank the Hustings, Kate, for chairing. It's been really well chaired. And hopefully the internet's been okay. Has been unstable, but yeah, I just want to really reaffirm my commitment to standing up for the trans community's rights and the rights of all the LGBTIQ, because the thing is, rights are at threat, all rights are at threat, not just within the community but across all society, and we have to stand up and defend our human rights at all times. I want to apologize that you've had to do some difficult conversation to listen to throughout these Hustings and throughout some of the others as well. We have to remember that we are speaking about people, and it's not just a subject of a debate or an issue. We're speaking about people here. So I want to thank you as well for enduring and listening through this today and listening to what we've had to say. I would be really proud to be the next deputy leader of the Green Party, to be a deputy leader that stands up for all forms of social justice, that understands that our fight for climate, economic justice, racial justice, and social justice too. There is a void right now. There's a void of any political party that's proud to be left-wing, proud to stand up for eco-socialist values, proud to stand with workers fighting for better pay, conditions, and treatment. A party that is proud to stand with and support those at the sharpest end of this widening inequality gap, which is exacerbated by the current cost of living crisis. And a party that's proud to loudly challenge the current flawed economic system that relentlessly destroys nature in the pursuit of profit. And right now, too, there's a void of a party who's clear and proud, really proud to champion and defend trans rights. For the most part, I think we are the void. But as I've said before, and as we've seen with the question around the Scottish Greens earlier, we are at risk of not.
15 seconds.
Thank you. We're at risk of losing our stance and of who we are and our identity. We need to stand up for what we believe policies and stand up for all of our communities. As your deputy leader, I would be proud to do so, and I commit to do so as deputy or not. With that platform, thank you so much. Thank you for the hostings.
Thank you, Tyrone. And up, last but not least, is Shara. Oh.
Thanks, Cade, and thank you so much, LGBTIQ Greens, for organising this hustings. I hope you found it informative. I am the candidate who stands for all inclusion. It's not all inclusive to want to expel members who have spent the best part of their life campaigning for the Green Party or voting for the Green Party and feel they no longer can. We have to be an all-inclusive party, and that includes the LGB and the other elements of the LGBTIQ umbrella. Let's just have a look at that. Lesbian and gay people, same-sex attracted people, are increasingly feeling that they are not having a voice through this community, and that's why they've set up other organizations. We shouldn't be castigating and alienating them and saying that they are transphobic. We should be listening to them, and that's why I described myself as a critical friend. I mean, I might even be a critical friend to Zach, because I've actually been really quite rather shocked and disappointed in some of the allegations and slurs, frankly, that he's been hurling at me. But I want us to rise above that. And I've not attacked Stonewall either. I have questioned our continued affiliation to Stonewall. And I do think that £9,000 coming over 6 years, that could be better spent and rotated to other campaigns, maybe even explicitly LGBTIQ plus campaigns. So that's just a matter of resourcing. And as one amongst equals on GPEX, I hope to be critical and a rational persuader on GPEX and not being driven by empty, frankly, talk about progressive without actually drilling down to what we mean by that. And finally, it is not progressive, is it, to fail to speak out when balaclava donned men are intimidating and abusing women outside, for example, campaigning on the streets
15
of Manchester
seconds.
or outside a statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. The Green Party needs to be rather more bold. At the moment, we are timid. We are retreating into an arena.
You're out of time there.
We are failing to listen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody who attended, and thank you, of course, to our candidates who are able to make it. This has been a really eye-opening hustings for me. I'm sure it has been for others. In closing, I do want to remind everyone of a statement that's often used in the disabled community of nothing about us without us. LGBTIQA Greens are really passionate about making sure that the people who are being represented voices are heard properly. So we really do strongly believe in that. Please make sure that if you are speaking on the behalf of LGBTIQA Greens, that you do remember who you're speaking for. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping. The voting will be opening on August the 1st and will be closing on August 30th. We have got some LGBTIQA Greens pledges going out fairly soon, so please keep an eye out for those. We hope to see you around soon. We will be reinstating our LGBTIQA Greens book club. We will be having that start up again. We've had a couple of months where things have fallen by the wayside a little bit. So hopefully see many people there, and I'm just getting some messages. So thank you all very, very much for attending. We will close it out there. Thank you.